I don't think anybody saw this one coming. All year long, the Boston Celtics were treated like a lock for the Eastern Conference Finals, and if not the NBA Finals. Their path seemed clear, their dominance was unquestioned, but now, somehow, they find themselves on the brink of elimination in just the second round, and to a team they swept 4-0 in the regular season nonetheless. The New York Knicks have walked into Boston, stealing not just one game, but two on the Celtics' home floor, flipping the series on its head and putting the pressure squarely on the Celtics to respond on the road. And the way those losses unfolded, dramatic, emotional, and frankly shocking, has me asking the question I didn't think I'd be asking. Did the Celtics fool us all year long? The first thing I need to talk about is the level of play we've seen from Jason Tatum through the first two games of the series, because honestly, it's been nowhere near good enough. Coming into the playoffs, I was really high on Tatum. I still believed that he was in that top tier superstar conversation, but if this Celtics team has any real shot at going the distance, Tatum needs to be significantly better than what he's shown so far. Game 1 had already raised lots of concerns. Sure, the stats on the surface look pretty good, 23 points, 16 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 stocks, but it came on 30% shooting with 5 turnovers, as he just never looked in control of the game. That kind of inefficiency might be survivable if it was an isolated incident, but Game 2, in what was essentially a must-win on our home floor, was a complete no-show from Jason Tatum. He finished the game with just 13 points on an even worse 26% shooting, adding 3 more turnovers. By halftime, he only had 2 points, as that is simply not what superstars do when their backs are against the wall. In fact, just a few hours later, we got a real-time example of how a superstar should respond in that situation. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Oklahoma City Thunder came out and absolutely decimated the Denver Nuggets after losing Game 1 in their own building, with SGA leading the charge, putting up 34 points on 84% shooting. That is what leading your team looks like when you're a bona fide superstar. Tatum, on the other hand, was practically invisible. Right now, the only areas he's truly helping the team is on the boards and on defense, which, to be clear, is still very valuable, but it's not what the Celtics need from him the most. They need him to be the guy. Throughout the season, I had Tatum ranked amongst the league's best players because of how well-rounded his game is. He's a scorer, a rebounder, a playmaker, and a defender all in one. But what really separates him from just a good player to a true superstar was, in my mind, his ability to take over games when it matters the most, especially as the number one scoring option. That is his role. That is what the team is ultimately built around. And so far in the series, he has not taken on that responsibility, not even for a second. Someone has to tell this guy, you're not a role player. The team needs you to go out there, get buckets, draw double teams, and make the correct passes off of drives. And through the first 2 games of this series, he hasn't done that at all. Now, I know there are still going to be plenty of Tatum defenders out there, and I get it. His overall game is strong, but that isn't the point. His number one duty on this team is to put the ball in the bucket, lead his team offensively, and in Game 2 against the Knicks team that frankly is not as good as Boston, he did not come with the correct urgency or energy. What makes this even more frustrating is how this is a matchup that should actually work in his favor. Coming into the series, I expected the Celtics to create offensive advantages in pick and pop setting, especially with New York's defense struggling to contain those actions all year long. But with Porzingis dealing with an illness and looking far from 100%, we've barely seen that pick and pop action so far in the series. Tatum and Porzingis ran those sets to perfection, specifically attacking Karl Anthony Towns, punishing his slow-footed defensive ability, generating open looks basically at will. Against the Knicks, though, it almost looks like they've abandoned it entirely, and Tatum has to take some of the blame for that. that. He's the leader. He needs to demand those screens, hunt those mismatches, and assert himself on the game. But again, he's failed to do that as well. It isn't just with Porzingis. Al Horford can come and set the screen and knock down an open three if he gets it, but that isn't even the point. Just being able to generate the switch onto Cat, where Tatum has the room and the quickness to exploit that mismatch, would be good enough. But his complete reluctance to back away from taking threes has really hurt this team, as at times this guy forgets that he is 6'9" while being as strong as anybody and quicker than all of his immediate defenders. It's especially disappointing because I was one of those people who believed that Tatum would be taking the next step this postseason. For me, he had finally cemented himself at the superstar table. But through these first two games, all I'm seeing is shades of the 2022 version of Tatum, the guy who struggled badly against the Heat in the conference finals and simply couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat against the Warriors in the NBA finals. Even last year, it was Jason's teammate Jaylen Brown who stepped up when it mattered the most, using his explosiveness and athleticism to get to his spots and ultimately bring home the conference finals MVP and the finals MVP, as he was the best player in their championship run, not Tatum. It's great if you can average 27, 9, and 6 over an 82-game regular season, and Tatum did. He had a fantastic season, but the postseason is where legacies are truly made. This is where superstars rise to the occasion, and right now, Jason Tatum simply is not doing that. So as we head into Game 3, that's what I'll be watching more closely than anything else. If he comes out passive again, settling for jumpers, not attacking mismatches getting downhill, and seemingly just cruising through the game, then honestly, I think it is about time that he loses that superstar card just as fast as he earned it. Now, there is a lot more going wrong for the Boston Celtics right now than just the play of Jason Tatum. The entire collapse feels like a familiar story, but this time, there aren't any excuses to hide behind. We've seen this team stumble in the playoffs before during the Tatum era. In 2023, they found themselves down 3-0 against the 8-seed Miami Heat and only managed to force a Game 7 thanks to Derek White's miracle putback in Game 6. Tatum would roll his ankle only a minute into Game 7, and the whole series was written off as bad luck. But what never gets talked about is how they dug that hole themselves in the first place. This year, it's the same story, but only worse. They're down 0-2 in a series against the Knicks, a team they swept in the regular season, and this time, the blame cannot be pinpointed on any injury or fluky play. Yes, Brown and Porzingis are banged up, but they're still out there playing, and the Celtics had 20-point leads in both games. There is no one to blame but themselves. The most frustrating part of it all is how predictable these collapses have been. We've seen it time and time again out of this group. They get a big lead, they start feeling comfortable, and then they take the foot off the gas. It happened in both games, despite the added awareness in Game 2 of what just happened in the first one. The second Boston built a cushion, they slowed down the pace, started aimlessly dribbling the ball on the perimeter, and jacked up threes like the game was already over. That's fine if you're up 20 with 2 minutes to go, but there was still a whole nother quarter left to be played, showing no respect to New York. Then, the Knicks would start to find their offensive rhythm, and the Celtics just continued to chuck threes with no purpose. The door was wide open for a comeback, and once the Celtics realized that the Knicks were getting right back into this game, it was far too late, as they tried to switch back into their usual offensive flow, but by that point, their rhythm was gone, as they basically handed New York all of the momentum in the game in both games 1 and 2. Game 2 was a prime example. Boston missed 13 straight shots in the fourth quarter, going over 7.5 minutes without a made field goal. That's not just poor execution. That is a team completely unraveling under the weight of the pressure. What's even more stunning is that the Knicks hadn't played great basketball in these games either. They've looked disjointed, struggled with consistency, and still they had been handed comeback wins in Boston's own building. After Game 1, Celtics fans and a lot of the national media pointed to the fact that the Celtics would not shoot that poorly again, as they missed 45 threes and shot 25% from deep in Game 1. But in Game 2, it happened again. They shot the exact same percentage. The difference was that early on, they weren't settling. They were attacking the the paint, getting downhill, and actually putting pressure on the Knicks defense. That is why they built the 20-point lead in Game 2. But then, predictably, they stopped. They fell in love with the three again, even though it clearly wasn't their night. And this goes beyond the players. It's systematic, it's coaching, it's their overall game plan. This team has doubled down on the three-point shot all season long, setting the record for the most threes attempted by a team in the history of the league. But that strategy only works when the shots are falling, and right now, they're not. Late December and January should have been a warning sign. They went through a stretch where their offense completely sputtered because their threes weren't dropping, and they had no alternative. Last year's Celtics could find a way to win games even when the three ball wasn't falling. This team doesn't have the same ability. When the three dries up, so does their entire offense. There is seemingly no backup plan, and the stubbornness to stick with it even when it's failing them in real time is what is so crazy. If Boston wants to climb out of the hole, there's two clear pathways forward. The first is that their three-point shooting miraculously returns, and more importantly, Tatum leads the way with a newfound aggression. Honestly, that feels like their best bet, not because it's the most reliable option, but because it fits what they've done all season and is the most likely to occur. The second option, what would be far more sustainable, would require a fundamental shift in the team's approach. Attack the rim, force the issue, and exploit the fact that New York, especially with the starting lineup, has very little rim protection. We saw that blueprint late in Game 2. The Celtics needed a bucket, and Tatum attacked Mitchell Robinson in the pick and roll, and because he's far quicker, he got a wide open dunk. That opportunity had been sitting there all night. They just never tapped into it until the game was absolutely on the line. And that's the problem. It's not just they lean too heavily on threes, it's that even when they know there's a better way to score, they don't go to it until it's absolutely necessary. That speaks to a deeper stubbornness, both from the players and the coaching staff. Everyone is clinging to this idea that the shooting will come around. The math will end up working in their favor. But deep down, you can tell that even they fully don't believe it. Because when they really needed a bucket, they abandoned their three-point shooting and went downhill. So if they know it's this reliable in the clutch, why would you not do it for the entire game? Going into Game 3 in Madison Square Garden, a building that is going to be absolutely rocking with their Knicks leading the series 2-0, it is absolutely do or die. And that is not an overstatement. If they lose this one, the series is over, because no team in the history of the league has made a comeback if they are down 3-0. If Boston lose this series, we'll be looking back on last season's championship run and wondering if it was just all smoke and mirrors, a product of one of the easiest paths to a championship we've ever seen. If the Celtics want to prove that last year was not a fluke and that this core is truly capable of greatness, not just regular season dominance, then this is their moment. It has to start with effort, intensity, and a smarter game plan. And while the Celtics collapse is shocking, they're not the only team from round 2 that is suddenly in danger. There's actually 3 other teams that won Game 1 in their respective series as underdogs, and now have a real chance to crash the title race. And if you're curious about those teams and why I think they actually can win it all, you can check out that full breakdown right now.